Hello, it's Florian Roos and good Saturday morning, I guess, and welcome to another Seawolves Vendee Globe pre-fun report. I'm really happy that the last video, lots of you guys decided to watch it and like it and comment on it. So I'm super happy, so that's why we're doing number 2. And very interesting actually, researching a bit that there aren't really any videos really going in depth into all of the systems on board of the most modern IMOCA foiling boats, so the Vendee Globe boats. And so I thought that today we're going to do some serious sailor nerding out by really taking an in-depth look at all of the super modern systems and innovation on the most current IMOCA foiling monsters. So the Hugo Boss, the Apiva, the Chirelles. We're going to look at all like the bow structure, mast, internal things, spreaders, like all the different things, and kind of look at really how these boats are different and what are the significant innovations driving this huge increase in speed, and hopefully making us even more enthusiastic and looking forward to the Vendee. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. So if you want to join me for probably half an hour to 45 minutes of some serious nerding out over the modern IMOCA boats, then this is the video for you. Let's get started. So the most current IMOCA foiling boats are an absolute sailing technology marvel. Anything that we as humans could have come up with to push boats to go faster, we put it in practice on these boats. The IMOCA class is an open class, so the match is not just between the sailors, it's also very much design and technology versus other people's design and technology. It's really a technology-driven race also. So much of the race is won, before the race even starts. It's run in the technical shed, on the drawing table, actually designing and building these boats. And so I'm gonna go piece by piece, part by part. It was actually quite hard to suss all this stuff out because I guess because all of the boats are quite different, most of the teams, I think, are being relatively reluctant to share a lot of the information, specifics about their boat. So there are many things that, of course, are kind of plain to see. But when it comes to how they're actually using it and what are really the key features, there really isn't a lot of official information out there. The foils make it faster, but how exactly? What exactly is making distinguishes a good foil from a bad foil and all this type of stuff. So there's lots to discover there, lots to have fun with. And let's start with the hull structure. Let's start with the bow, because there are some very interesting things going on there. And of course I'll add some videos and pictures in here to kind of illustrate constantly what I'm talking about, and so you guys don't have to look at my ugly mug all the time. Basically the first thing that really stands out when we look at the bows of the most modern IMOCAs, and for this video I'll mostly be looking at Apiva, Hugo Boss, Chirelle, and 11th Hour racing. And the boat from 11th Hour is actually not racing in the Vendee, but it is a IMOCA class boat. But this one in particular is designed for the upcoming Volvo Ocean race, which is also going to have a IMOCA class, and so they'll be starting the race next year. But fortunately, the 11th Hour racing team has released quite a lot of long high-resolution drone footage of the boat actually just flying along, as you can see here. And those videos are actually really great for analyzing what's going on, because we get to see the boat under sail and we get to kind of zoom in and nerd out on all of the different details. So let's start with the bow. And so one thing that's very interesting is that bows have become more round lately. This is also something that you see in the mini class. And the reason for that, as far as I can find, is that the sphere, so the circular shape like that, It saves material and weight because obviously a sphere is the most efficient use of space. It's the most efficient angle. And so, spheres are kind of famous for being the most amount of mass in the least amount of space. So using a spherical type bow lets you save weight because you need less material to build the bow. There's less material that actually goes into it. If you build a pointy bow or like if it has any sort of non-circular shapes, then you're going to need more material, which add more weight. So you save a little weight there. And also, as I mostly understand from the mini class actually, is because the bows there have become rounder and rounder also, is that it really helps the boat with planing. So this particular bow just allows the boat to get up on the plane faster, I guess, because it's wider, it's flatter, and so especially in downwind situations, it really helps the boat to plane, and so to get up on the plane and get into higher speeds faster. And so this is also something that they are now have started to do in the IMOCA class, especially in this shot of Cherelle. You can really see how round the bow is compared to other boats, say the boat from Pip Hare here, one of the previous generation boats. Or even if you look at Initiative's Kerr here in this video, you can see that they have still that old kind of pointy, pretty much a straight angular bow, let's say. And here with Cherelle and also here with Hugo Boss, you can see that the bow is significantly rounder. Then another interesting thing on the bow is that we can see that there is this kind of slopiness to it on the top side. So it kind of slopes down, and you can see here on Hugo Boss, you can also see that here on 11th Hour Racing, that there's this line where the bow kind of goes up and kind of tapers into a very pointy and narrow end on the top side. And that, as I understand it, has a lot to do with aerodynamics. And so the reason for that is that once these boats hit their high speeds, which is an average of 30 plus knots, right? Now, if you would drive 60 kilometers an hour, or it's like I guess 30 miles an hour, almost 40 miles an hour, you put your hand outside the car, you will feel a lot of air drag, right? Like if you put your hand like this or you put your hand like this, you'll really feel the difference. And so at the speeds that these modern IMOCA boats are flying, aerodynamics are really significant. Like it's not with like a normal like Mainsail boat, Spirit of Amsterdam, or like the normal production boat, where aerodynamics, so what we do on planes and race cars, really makes a difference. Because if you're going 6 knots, the aerodynamics are virtually negligible. But when you're going 30 knots or hitting top speeds of over 40 knots with these boats, then aerodynamics become really important. And so when we look at the overall hull shape, starting with the bow, we can see that once the boat is really going and they're heeling over properly, they're foiling, as you can see here in the video from 11th Hour, that going at this speed, you can see that the shape is actually really perfectly built for flying, for air. That's what I also talked about in the previous video. The hull is really designed for aerodynamics, so not for being very sleek through the water, let's say. It's not the optimum shape to move through the water, it's really the optimum shape to fly through the air. And so that's why we have all these kind of angles and cuts to make sure that when the boat is going full speed, when it's heeling over, when it's foiling, that the air can flow over the whole boat really efficiently. And when we look at Hugo Boss, for example, here, which is fully enclosed, I'll get to that point. So we have everything inside the boat, and Alex Thompson doesn't have to exit the boat at all to do pretty much any of the maneuvers. He can do everything from inside. But when you look at this design, you can also see that really from the front, from the bow to the stern, this boat is very, very aerodynamic. It's literally shaped, sloping like an airplane wing, not presenting any significant obstacles to the airflow. And that's really, really significant, because in these boats, aerodynamics really matter. So that's the bow section. Then the second thing that really stands out with this modern IMOCAs is the spreader configuration. So, we all know, I think, what spreaders are. It's the thing that, keeps the stays off of the mast and balances the mast really nicely. But these modern IMOCAs don't have traditional spreaders. Instead, they have these two giant kind of poles that are sticking out of the side and, going into the hull somewhere, midway high. And also have lines going all the way to the bow and to the stern. And so the interesting thing about this is that it gives the mast a much wider mast base, creating much more stability. But in combination with the double backstay that all of the modern IMOCAs seem to be having, it really allows, of course, for very precise mast control. So there's no information really to be found on how they're exactly raking and adjusting the mast and how many options they have there. But they have at least two backstays and they have these spreaders, which are obviously also doubling in the function of kind of like a spinnaker pole. Or if you think of a catamaran, maybe even better, when you're sailing downwind on a catamaran, you generally don't need to pole out your Genoas, your J's, because the catamarans are so wide that you can set the tack really wide and open the sail really easily. Now on a monohull, that's always been a difficult thing. So if you want to go sailing downwind, especially if you're doing something like a butterfly configuration, then you're going to have to pull out your J. You're going to have to pull out your Genoa in order to make the head sail wide enough so you can really catch all of that wind flowing with you. And so the way to kind of hit two birds with one stone, let's say, is this new option where you give the boat a much wider mast base, hopefully creating a lot more stability and strength to hold the mast, so less masts breaking, etc., hopefully. But you also create this ideal attachment point, as you can see here in the video of 11th Hour Racing, where you can set your tack very easily over the entire length of the pole. And so it gives the pilot, it gives the sailors a very cool option with this line here that you can see in the video of 11th Hour to basically pole out their J's, to pull out their head sails as far to the side of the boat as they want, giving them the upwind sailing ability of, say, a catamaran, because they can set the sail really wide on there. And so that's something that we also don't see on the previous generation boats. So on the previous generation that have been upgraded with foils, we always see these new types of spreaders. But on Pip's Hare's boat, for example, we still see the old school normal spreaders that are mounted to the side of the boat, let's say. And so that's also a really significant thing that I imagine for them to pull out their J's is as easy as pulling one line and just setting that tack point way out, very, very easily opening that huge sail up for setting a great downwind course. And of course, I'm sure that they can do that with multiple tack points. So if they have one or two or maybe even three head sails up, I think they'll be able to set the wide, from the center line of the boat very, very precisely with that system. So that's really a major piece of technology that I think is going to be very, very helpful in any kind of broad reaching or downwind courses. That'll be a major, major advantage. So those two poles, I think, are maybe as significant of a speed increase, of an ability increase to sail better at different points of sail, as for example the foil. So these spreaders are very, very cool. They're very, very significant. Then the third point I want to look at, and those are those double backstays that I talked about and the setting of the mast. So when we look at these ultra modern IMOCAs, it seems to me that the mast is set back quite a bit from what you might consider the center of the boat. So real racing setup with the mast maybe slowly going further and further back. It seems especially dramatic to me when you look at Hugo Boss and the way that boat is laid out. Like the mast is far back, But you can also see that the fully enclosed cockpit and these three windows where Alex Thompson is actually sitting, that he's very, very close to the mast. So his control space has really moved from where the sailors would traditionally be kind of in the back end of the boat, let's say, managing everything. It seems that Alex is really almost in the middle of the boat. So he's set a lot more forward, which is, I think, very interesting. It's almost as if his position is like right beneath the mast base, maybe saving a lot of turn blocks and basically saving a lot of distance for the ropes to travel all the way to the back to set them, maybe saving stretch and all this type of stuff. So if you imagine that basically all the lines come usually to the center, kind of around where the boom hits the deck, and then if you imagine Alex's control space being right kind of behind there, then you can imagine that he's going to be able to control all of his lines very directly with very little distance between where all the different lines come actually onto the deck of the boat and the point where he's actually controlling them. So I think that's also a very, very cool, very, very significant feature. And I think that's something that we're also going to be seeing a lot in the future, let's say. Then there's, of course, the elephant in the room, and that is the foils. And so the one thing that is like unmistakably happening with the foils is that they're getting larger, right? So the previous generation foils were just when you look at them in a video side by side, it's very obvious that they're much smaller, and I don't mean just in length but also in width. So they're just a much smaller wing, and it seems that that entire wing has basically become larger by maybe a factor of almost 3. Like it looks to me like they're at least twice, maybe 3 times bigger in mass. So you can imagine that if that also translates to an ability to fly the boat that is like twice or maybe 3 times more intense, more powerful than the previous generation foils, then that is a massive, massive difference. And looking at these drone videos again, I think it's very interesting to see that in actuality the boat is really not so much flying on the foils, but it seems to be bumping around between the keel of the boat and the foil. So it's like the boat is sort of flying on the foil for a few seconds, then bumping back to the keel, which is also kind of flying, but stabilizing it towards the other side of the of how the boat swings, let's say, and then swinging back again on the foil, swinging back again on the keel. And so when I was watching this, I thought to myself, maybe there's actually a lot of strength to be gained in keel design. Like it seems that actually the design of the keel as a foil, as also a flying wing, let's say, just in the opposite direction, then maybe that there's something also to be gained there in future generations. It's not something that's going on, but having studied quite a few videos for the entire day, basically yesterday, about this, I wonder if there's still stuff to gain there. But anyway, so the major thing about the foils is the size, first of all, and also there seems to be a lot of experimentation going around with the shape. So we see foils like in Initiative Curse, for example, that are coming out of the boat and then have a significant surface that seems, well, it's not exactly flat, it definitely has a curve to it, but it's flattish, let's say, and then angles back up. While if we look at the foils of, say, Hugo Boss, they've gone with this really radical looking, almost completely circular looking foil design, which seems quite different. So the size is one thing, but between the different foiling boats, when you look at the shape of the foils, they're all quite significantly different. And it might be cool to do a whole video on foil design at some point, and kind of maybe talking to an expert or something about the intricacies of that, so we can see a little bit what are actually the surfaces that they are dealing with. And it's also very hard to find any information on how these foils are actually controlled in detail. So they can put them out and they can put them in, and they can obviously control the amount of foil that they push out of the boat and into the water. But I don't know if it's possible to also maybe angle the foil still a little bit, if there's any control there, or if there are any kind of internal control surfaces to the foil that they can kind of set or trim a little bit. There seems to be no information on that at all. So if you know something about that, or if you're a foiling expert watching this, please contact me and maybe we can have a nice long in-depth conversation about that. I think that would be very interesting. But that's basically what I can say right now about the foils. Now, what I also find very interesting is the mainsail. So one development that we see happening now in the American Cup boats, the new American Cup boats, is this very interesting thing where basically the aft deck of the boat and the mainsail boom are completely aligned. So they have this kind of maybe a little bit soft tissue or rubber or something between there, but it's completely aerodynamically sealed. So there's no way for the air to flow underneath the sail. It can really go only one direction, which is up into the sail. And it's said that they're doing this to control the aerodynamics once again, and to keep all of the power that flows over the boat into the sail. And so it has literally one direction to go, and that's into the sail and up or over. And this is also something that we have been seeing in the IMOCAs, that the mainsail booms are starting to come down towards the deck. You can see it in Apiva, you can see it in Chirel, you can see this in Hugo Boss, that the main boom is quite low to the deck. They haven't made the jump yet to a boom that is completely, like in the America's Cup, kind of sealing with the deck. But a boat like Hugo Boss, for example, where he's mostly sitting inside, I think that I would almost be willing to bet that that will be the next evolution of that, so that in a next rendition, maybe even after the Vendee, if they want to do something innovative to change that boom and make it lock onto the deck in the same way that those American Cup boats are doing it, that is a development that we're going to see also in the IMOCAs at some point. But we can see that the booms are already located quite low. Another thing is the rudders that go up. So that's also something that you see in the Volvo Ocean 65s and 60s, for example. But still significant compared to many other race boats that they have the second rudder, which they can fold up to also make that very aerodynamic and make sure that can't create any extra drag or anything like that. And lastly, and we talked about this already a little bit, of course, but is the fully enclosed cockpits. And so this is something that you see, that's something that you do see a lot in interviews. It's kind of the talk of the town right now, especially because of the Hugo Boss design with the fully enclosed cockpit and literally all of the lines, everything coming into this central place below the mast that I talked about before. And so actually when we look at the Apiva, Chirel, we see that those don't have fully enclosed cockpits. I mean, Apiva is pretty close. Hugo Boss is completely enclosed. Chirel is a little bit more open, but you can clearly see that the control space, so where the pilot is staying, is starting to become more and more enclosed. And you see it also in a lot of interviews. The speeds of the boats are just becoming so high that it's virtually impossible for the sailors to see anything, because they can literally stick their head above the boundary, let's say, for a few seconds to check a sail or whatever, and then the water will be coming over again, and waves with such a force and such volume of water also that it's just kind of dangerous to do that. So unless they're in really flat water with nice weather, then it's of course easy to sit on the rail and still look up and sail very nicely that way. But if they're in any kind of wavy scenarios or going upwind at all, then there's just so much water coming over the boat that it's virtually impossible to be out in the open, and they just have to seek shelter constantly and be able to control the boat from there. And so it will be interesting to see where this development goes, especially if these three boats, especially Hugo Boss with the fully enclosed cockpit, does well and proves that is a real advantage. Then I think that's something that we're going to be seeing on many of the next generation boats. And Of course, also once you go inside and the wind and the water coming over no longer is a real problem, it might actually allow us to push the boats a lot harder. Like when you're sure that you never really have to go outside to do anything, then you can treat the boats like a spaceship much more, right? Then you can maybe push it a lot more once you eliminate the necessity for having to go outside. You might have to go outside a little bit for a few maneuvers here and there or whatever, but you can slow the boat down for that. But if you know that you can control everything from the inside, then you might be able to push these boats still 10 knots harder or whatever, who knows. So I think that's also something, a very, very interesting solution. And you can definitely see when you look at all the different boats that I'm looking at right now, that the way that they place the windows on the Hugo Boss, for example, compared to a Piva or Charelle, is very, very different. And Hugo Boss is also said to be making a lot of use of cameras. So they have collision prevention cameras, but they also have cameras on all the different angles of the deck, which will be cool because we'll be able to follow Alex as he's maneuvering, as he's doing things. And I hope they will be releasing a lot of that footage, especially the 360 footage that they published already is very interesting, of the boat just going like a mad bull for about 2 minutes, and you can look around at everything and see the setup and really see the boat in action and how it works. Would be very interesting to see a video like that with Alex actually doing maneuvers or while they tacking, and being able to see all of that in action. I think for sailing nerds like us will be very interesting, so I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for this video. So, we talked about the bow, the spreaders, the foils, the double backstays, the fact that the cockpits are completely enclosed, the mast position, the controls. So, yeah, a lot of nerding out. And again, open invitation. So if you are somebody, or if you know somebody who really knows all of the intricate details of these boats, because you've maybe owned one or sailed one or know somebody who sails one, and you are maybe able to connect with somebody like that, that would be really cool. I think it would be really interesting to actually have a long, in-depth technical conversation, really getting into the nitty-gritty on how one of these boats works, and what are some of the interesting, tiny maybe little innovations that make the boat a lot faster. So again, I hope that you enjoyed this little Vendee Globe pre-fun report. Next time, if you guys massively like and watch this video again, I think I'll do a preview of the route. So I think I'll dive into the different phases of the route, looking at the different weather systems and kind of talking through the entire course a little bit, and sort of pinpointing the key moments and interesting transitions and stuff going on in there, because I think that's also something that's very interesting. Maybe we'll also combine it with some more technical analysis of like what kind of systems on the boat will be interesting in those transitional moments. So yeah, we'll see. If you like that idea, like it. Also, if you have other ideas, suggestions, please leave them in the comments, and hope to see you again in the next video. So like, share, etc. and see you again soon.